All right, folks, welcome back to the Steve Malzberg Show. Steve Malzberg and Mary Walter, and we are joined by one of my favorite people to talk to, Larry Kudlow, CNBC senior contributor and host of the Larry Kudlow Radio Show. Hello, Larry.
Hello, Steve. Thank you.
My pleasure. Say hello to Mary Walter.
Hello, Mary.
Hey, Larry. How are you?
Good, thanks.
Good.
All right. Well, the election results are in, and I'm not talking about 2016 or even November of 2014, but the majority leader and the House Whip, and we have Kevin McCarthy and Steve Scalise. Now, one establishment and one not so much.
Well, yeah, I think the interesting part of this is Steve Scalise. He's a Southern Republican. He's a conservative Republican. He represents the Republican study group. So you're moving the party. I think the center of gravity moves slightly to the right on this. All right, not gigantic step to the right because it's a conservative caucus to begin with, but I think slightly to the right, and I think a lot of the members wanted a Southerner. They felt they were not represented properly, and they got one. And by the way, I know him quite well. He was a frequent guest on my CNBC show and radio, and he's a very smart guy, Steve Scalise. Very smart guy.
Larry, ideologically, is Kevin McCarthy in line with Cantor, or is he further to the right?
With Cantor?
Yeah.
That's an interesting question. I don't know. You're talking about little small amounts here. There's no gigantic shifts here. I don't think there's going to be much difference. Bear in mind, the role of the majority leader is in some sense a super whip role. All right, it may not be a policy-making position. That's really done by the Speaker and another person whose name hasn't come up yet, and that's Paul Ryan. Paul Ryan is the single most important policy influence on the Republican caucus. I think he's going to be the Ways and Means chairman. I think he's going to be pushing tax reform in a very big way, pro-growth tax reform. So when you ask me about McCarthy versus Cantor, I'm not sure I can find a big difference.
And of course, if you ever watch Seinfeld, you know what the role of the whip is. Kramer told Jerry that in the old days, if you didn't vote the way they wanted you to, they whipped you.
Well, there is something to that, by the way. I mean, there is something to that. But again, these are tough races. I mean, Peter Roskam is also a friend of mine. He's a very smart guy.
But he lost in the races for the whip.
He lost in the Scalise race. Roskam, I regard Roskam as a conservative Republican also. But look, Steve Scalise is really becoming a star. He was elected the chairman of the Republican Study Group, 2 years ago, I think, in 2012 or early 2013. And now he's got himself the number 3 spot in the entire Republican leadership. So obviously keep your eye on Steve Scalise, and he is going to be a force. And again, I've talked to him so many times, I've interviewed him so many times. He's a very knowledgeable guy on policy. Now his job is not going to be policy maker, but he's a very knowledgeable guy about policy. And I doubt if this will be his ceiling. I doubt if this will be his limit. If he stays as a House member, I think he'll go higher.
All right, let's turn our attention to Iraq, Larry, and Mary and I have been talking about that a lot today. Certainly the president came out and basically, for better or for worse, said he's not going to do much at all, which means that the propaganda and the actual bloody takeover of many towns and cities in Iraq will continue on the part of ISIS. How is that going to affect our economy? I've seen reports that it could cost us billions, and I guess that probably includes energy prices and gas prices, but where are we headed with this?
Well, look, can I just say one point?
You could say whatever you want. You're Larry Kudlow, darn it.
I wish I knew, and I wish the president knew exactly what his policy is regarding Iraq. I don't think he has a policy. And I think if he had a policy, we would have heard about it. And he might even go before the entire American public on TV and tell us what it is he expects to do in Iraq and why. I mean, I don't get it. You get these rumors out of the White House, rumors about bombing the ISIS group in western Iraq. rumors about getting rid of al-Maliki, who I think is a bad guy and is an obstacle to any progress. Rumors about dividing up Iraq into several pieces, which is where I think they're going one way or another. I just don't understand his policy. And I just want to say that because it's just, I'm sure they're having lots of meetings. I don't know who said it, but where's his Kissinger, for God's sakes? Where are the experts in the National Security Council? I don't get it. And what I do get is the president himself. He's more engaged than he was, but he is not a foreign policy expert, and most of what he's touched in foreign policy has turned to stone. And I fear that his management of policy in Iraq is also going to turn to stone. So I just want to say that. Regarding oil prices right now, there has not been any big move in the oil markets here in the U.S. regarding West Texas crude. We haven't seen it so far. In fact, both the oil market, oil is $106.61 today. It's up a half a buck, but it moved up from 102 to 106. That's the most we've seen. And so it hasn't had much of an impact. It hasn't had an impact on the stock market either. The big issue here, you've got the oil fields in Kirkuk. Those are going to be controlled by the Kurds. All right, and the Kurds are going to be shipping it to Turkey, from what I gather, and the Kurds are going to be an independent state called Kurdistan. So I don't see any radical jihadist takeover there. The other major fields down south in the Basra area, I think, are going to be protected by Shias and by Iran. The risk is you lose 2 million barrels a day out of Basra, all right? And that would drive up prices a lot if, in fact, that happened, and it would drive up gasoline prices. But at the moment, I don't see it. I think the oil fields, they're intact. That's the best I can say, and our markets are shrugging it off right now.
Oh, that's at least some good news. Larry, will Obama face opposition from Democrats if he chooses to launch a major military offensive? Will there be any pushback from Democrats?
I'm sure there will be. What I call the Sandinista wing of the Democratic Party. I think that they don't want any part of it. And there may be pushback from Republicans, too. The country doesn't want a re-involvement in Iraq. The country is tired of war. I know that's a cliche, but I hear it all the time. I hear it all the time. And I think that unless the president has a clear-cut view, we hate these jihadists who have marched in from Syria into western Iraq, all right? We hate them. And we don't want it to fester, and we don't want them to have their own, area, real estate, or whatever it is. And yet, if the people in Iraq cannot take care of them, can we? Can the U.S. really take care of them? Can bombing missions, I don't mean drones, I mean serious bombing missions. Is that possible? Is that feasible? You're going to have to put a lot of people on the ground in order to do that. You don't just lob bombs.
Right. You need intelligence, and I agree with you. But
you need air controllers.
Yep.
You need intelligence. You need a lot more special forces than we're talking about. What is it that we want here?
Well, I'll tell you what most Americans don't want, and Obama's done it anyway. We've armed and fought alongside jihadists in Libya, in Syria. It's something we've negotiated now with terrorists and exchanged Taliban for a soldier. So he's setting precedents left and right, and I think it's all bad. But I want to get to one more thing before Mary and I have to let you go, and that is this proposal, this bipartisan proposal in the Senate to raise the gas tax by 12 cents over 2 years. Does it have a future? Because again, I understand, the driving is down. They want to prop up the money pot to fix the roads, et cetera. But is this the time to institute this in our economy?
Yeah, slapping a gas tax on right now would be a very bad idea, in my opinion, a very bad idea. There are other ways that this can be accomplished. And here, too, I just want to inject this typical Kudlow supply side view.
Well, we got a minute, so go ahead.
I want economic growth. I want economic growth, so revenues will be thrown off from a variety of different sources. Why do I have to penalize motorists? Why is that? I want growth. We should be looking at major slashing of the corporate income tax right now. We should be repatriating profits from overseas to invest. We should be lowering regulations right now. We should be promising flat tax reform for individuals. We should have a pro-business administration so we can get long-term investment and jobs. That's what we
And
need.
you belong in the next, I'm being optimistic here, Republican administration. That's where
need-
you belong.
We don't need gas taxes. We need general growth. Growth, by the way, throws off revenues.
Larry, always great to talk to you. We look forward to talking to you again. Larry Kudlow, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be back with Gimme 5. Don't go away.